Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. And I would love to welcome Mr. Carsten Krohn from Citation to the podcast. Welcome, Carsten.
Hey, nice to see you, and hey to the folks on the internet here.
No, we're looking forward to having this chat today. Now, before we get into Citation, who you are, what you do, how you do it, everything else, tell us how you got into this wonderful world of PIM, MDM, e-com, B2B, B2C, the whole nine yards. Your career has been littered with lots of different roles, varied roles, lots of sales roles, lots of product roles, oftentimes global roles, global head of sales, national sales. But then you started out way back when in 2010 as a financial consultant. So, man, you've had a broadly varied career.
Yeah, so born and raised Germany, but let's fast forward. I moved to the US for different reasons. Started my career on the client side, so to say. So I come from industry. I worked in toy and sporting goods and personal care, really as a kind of like a consumer or a customer that lives through the challenges of bad product data and how do you distribute product data to trading partners, your own websites, and how do you really enrich product data to get better conversion, and how do you communicate to your target audience? So I was in sales, primarily focusing on e-commerce, and by that is typically meant in the toy and sporting goods world, it was more on the retail side, so Amazon, Walmart, Target, and so forth. But then at some point also at a company where I worked in personal care, where I led a global digital team, really combating all of the challenges that we as a manufacturer had engaging with our consumers on the digital shelf. And so there I was responsible for implementing PIMs, implementing e-commerce systems, implementing DAMs, implementing processes that help us from a very traditional manufacturing business that is really like B2B focused, where we just sell to a Walmart, to now make that leap going into, hey, how do we now actually sell to our consumers? How do we generate content that speaks to our consumers, that answers their questions? Now, one of my first things there is I started at the company and I was not in charge of pricing, and everybody thought, hey, we only win on price on our retail channels. And so I wasn't in charge of this. So all I could do is create content, create this message, create SEO, look at consumer questions, and then put these things in place and improve on that. And we saw our revenue skyrocket, like sales went up, because really consumers purchased based on the information that they received and then the comfort that they had of doing business with you as a company. And so that really opened my eyes as, man, the power of data and the power of content, and how many companies struggle and are so outdated with that. And so that's when I met my now boss. He worked with us, or he was a consultant to me at the company. And he said, hey, Carsten, I'm trying something big here. I think this is a great thing, the world of the internet. And so I joined him 5-6 years ago, and then we built a real practice around PIM, MDM, content, now Gen AI, agentic AI. Right now we leaning into the next phases of what that could be.
Wow, incredible. And you know what I love, and in all transparency, never used Citation before, never worked with Citation before, so I have to go with what's on the tin. But you guys seem to bring together multiple practices and capabilities under one roof, and you're not just a consultancy, you're not just a search and select partner, you're not just a PIM MDM implementation or site search partner, but you also have your own unique suite of software to go along with your services. Now, you're not trying to be a PIM MDM solution, but what you're trying to do is, at least as far as I can tell, is give PIM MDM solutions, site search solutions, superpowers, right? So what it looks like here is most of your software appears to be mostly pre-PIM, right? Mostly, not entirely, because obviously deal pitch is post-PIM, taking information out of the PIM and creating pitch decks or sell sheets directly out of the PIM, and managing supplier data submissions into the PIM system if the PIM system already doesn't have that capability out of the box. That's right. But you do have key technology partners, both in the PIM MDM space, the AI space, and the search dam commerce space as well. Algolia famously, Basecom, Profitero, and then the PIM MDM space at Kenio, Salsify, Stebo, and Syndigo. As a full stack B2B commerce consultant, consulting on ERPs, CRM, CDP, PIM, commerce, system integration, iPaaS systems, point of sale systems, I have been into PIM MDM for many years.
Yeah.
I implemented it. I've also implemented PIM MDM as a brand before. So I know how important PIM MDM solutions are to the world of commerce, full stop. I've experienced it firsthand like you, but then also now I'm in the consulting space as well. But what I'd love to get your take on is when your boss first came to you and said, look, we're gonna not only have implementation, we're not only gonna have consulting practices around these technologies, we're not only gonna have implementation practices around these technologies, but we're also gonna effectively build our own software to enhance and extend the software we're already working with to make them even more powerful and more useful to brands. That feels, just on the surface of it, when I look at that, knowing how complex each one of those things independently are, if you're trying to bring all that under one roof, I know just how hard that is. So did you feel like, holy shit, this is really ambitious?
Yeah. And I think even now, if you add AI and agentic AI, right, there's a time in your life when you're incredibly comfortable, you know exactly what it is that you're selling. But then the world of around e-commerce evolves so quick. So it's always, oh crap, I need to catch up. There's so much I need to learn. I need to be a consultant in this. And yes, when we looked at all these things in our plan of what we want to be, but the plan was really driven by like, how can we, as a relatively small company, we're 70 people now, but how can we pack a punch that is far greater than the size of our people? And that is only achievable with a systems technology of our own, and then obviously with the strategy and idea and vision to put this in place. And so what we are focusing on, and we're still staying true to that part, is what we consider the aspect of digital merchandising. So really, how does product data travel through the enterprise? Who in your organization is responsible for managing, enriching, controlling, and govern what parts of data? What system does that travel to? And how do we now deliver this information out to wherever it needs to go? And for that, we then partnered strategically with platforms. You mentioned PIM, our PIM partners around Decunio, Saucify, Syndigo, Stibo, for example. You mentioned our search, right? So you have the merchandising part that is very relevant for distributors and retailers. But then you also have merchandising that is relevant for manufacturers, right? So they sell more in retail marketplaces, for example. So the syndication onto marketplaces is much more important for them. But then you also have the retailers, and we help them. They have a big problem on how do now I receive product data from all my suppliers, but they send it to me in all different formats, and they call it all different kinds of things, different taxonomies. And how do I now normalize that in order to show it to my customers on my website in a really nice way that they can easily browse and find my product catalog? Sounds simple, big problem. That's what we deliver. We create a supplier portal. We realized there's a gap that not out-of-the-box solutions do that very well. So we created a product for this. And it's been very successful and helps a lot of retailers today. Staples is one of them, for example. But then also on the content enrichment side of things, we created generative AI. Like, how can we enrich product content with AI at scale? And not just to be a party trick, right? We don't want it to be just push a button and here's your content. But how can we create this as a scalable enterprise solution? And what I mean by that is, think about a chocolate company that wants to merchandise digitally in store for Valentine's Day, for Christmas, for Easter, right? They have displays and end caps in the store. Why not do the same thing on the digital shelf, right? Why not create content that speaks to Valentine's Day, load it with keywords, load it with all the information that people like search for? But really important, it still needs to be cohesive against regulatory, right? Compliance, right? We cannot claim that less sugar equals healthy, right? You still have a really tight wrapper around making sure it meets brand guidelines and things like this. And so we created a really tight Gen AI solution that delivers this at scale, compliant to both get brand and all the regulatory pieces as well, but allows that to really merchandise the same way that they would do in the store. And that has been really successful. It's integrated with PIM, integrated into a merchandiser's process. And really, we really focus on, you nailed it, right? How can we enhance the capabilities that they have today and really supercharge PIM, MDM, syndication, onboarding, all those processes by our own technology to really make this like a powerhouse, and the customers leverage the value that they get out of the systems. It's a big staple of the ecosystem. And they're having a good functioning engine running that supports their digital merchandising processes. And that's really why we created these tools. And it's been really successful for our customers.
And the reality is that PIM MDM is definitely feels like it's starting to get its time in the sun, and it's starting to be even traditional retail brands who have maybe only ever sold through their pure play online business. Maybe they've only ever sold through Shopify, or maybe they've only ever sold through Amazon. Maybe they're an Amazon pure play business or omni-channel businesses where they haven't necessarily ever needed to have the ability to slice and dice data by channel, by context, by language, by localization, by personalization. They haven't necessarily needed to do all those things before, but they now need that capability and power. And many brands want to be, and they have a ambition to be channel agnostic, but without some sort of a system to turn your product data into a channel agnostic asset, it is impossible to ever achieve that. And sure, you've got to think about pricing. Sure, you've got to think about how you acquire customers. Sure, you have to think about how you serve and maintain customers and retain them. It all starts with the product that you're selling. And at the end of the day, if you can't contextualize the product that you're selling for the channel you're selling it in, it makes it almost impossible to become channel agnostic in that way, right?
Yeah. And I think you mentioned one point, and it sounds incredibly cliche, but in an e-commerce environment, your product data is your product. What is natural to us is that we go into a store and pick something up, and we touch it, we feel it, we see exactly how big it is and what it can do. On a digital environment, you need to make sure that those experiences come to life with product data. And that's really the key here, to enable companies, big, small, large, to do this at scale, but also really focusing on their customer base. Sometimes you sell in a B2B environment where you sell on technical specifications, but sometimes you sell to a D2C consumer that looks more of a use case specific, like envisioning this in their home, for example. And those experiences require a ton of different product data points. And for that, you really need a system to manage that centralized, right? You can't do this on spreadsheets and then expect us to do that on 50 retail sites on your own website to be all cohesive. And then you need to make one single update, and you need to do that 50 times. And even if you're just a small company, right, you still want to be able to have an efficient way of sharing product data. And a PIM is just the starting point. And it really, that enables you to leverage all the new things around AI, all the newest and greatest things. And really, if there's people out there that don't use a PIM yet, that is really the heartbeat of an e-commerce operation. And if there's a catalog that has thousands of SKUs, you should really look into getting a PIM, because I think the time has passed where you can no longer do without one. You actually have to invest into a digital stack to be competitive in that landscape these days.
Yeah, I think for most verticals, most brands, PIM now, PIM MDM, to a lesser extent, enterprise search, merchandising, personalization.
Yeah.
These are now table stakes, right? If you want to do e-commerce, right, if you want to be omnichannel, if you want to sell online, if you want to automate, if you want to bring any kind of headless experience to what were traditional sales channels like email, WhatsApp, Slack, Teams, if you want to extend product data into these unique experiences, or to kiosks, or to point of sale systems, or whatever it might be, and you want to be able to contextualize that data for those experiences, and you want to be able to slice and dice that data without modifying the base data that is based on, you have to do that. And then secondarily, to your point, I think that when we look at almost every AI solution out there today, every search merch personalization solution, and there's many of them out there that are very good, it is absolutely a case of garbage in, garbage out. And the reality is that good product data has to be structured in such a way that these systems can ingest them meaningfully, that we can have meaningful taxonomies, that we can have meaningful, both structured and unstructured data around these products. And in many instances, there is data that is unique by channel that, for example, somebody like an Amazon with their mappings, somebody like a Target with their mappings, somebody like a Walmart Plus with their mappings, every one of these unique selling channels have data requirements and data mappings that are associated with them that are almost impossible to achieve. Sure, you could use something like a channel advisor, some sort of omni-channel listing tool that acts as a middleware platform for mappings and things like that, but it still has to have the raw data there and available to that to map into those channels. Even if it's something as simple as a product comparison or a shopping comparison website, you have to have the data. And so it feels like a lot of brands are finally starting to realize that trying to manage all of this in Excel or Google Sheets, or maybe even to a lesser degree, something like a Notion or something like an Airtable or something like that, you really need a purpose-built solution for this, that generic solutions really aren't going to get it done, or at least they will not allow you to scale without throwing a whole lot of bodies at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And for this is, unfortunately, this is like an unpopular or nerdy response, but the key for all of this is the fundamental requirement of a solid data model. Like you mentioned, right? What is your attribution looks like, your taxonomy, really outlining and defining some rules and validations around the base layer of your data, which is the data model. And on then you can put on any automation or transformation, right, to make it meet these channels requirements. You can transform data based on that logic. But if you're missing that really cohesive data model, all of the automation will always be a painful process because it works for 80% and then it messes up for 20. And then you need to go in and custom code something, and then you have a big mess on your hand. And so really the foundational piece is the data modeling piece. This is what we have our expertise in. We look at that from the core, but truly this enables you to do the automation that enables you to do syndication, transformation. And we approach every project exactly like this. Every project that we do has always a big focus on data model optimization, because you're truly right, like garbage in, garbage out, the results. And you see this even if you type something in. I think the easiest one is ChatGPT. If you just type incomplete information in there, ChatGPT will not do what you're looking for. And so the same thing goes with all of the other things that you want to do with either it was an integration or some sort of workflow optimization, or if it's channel syndication, whatever that is. Site search is a great example too, right? It's an interesting concept, but little diversion here. If you look at a cherry coffee table, you're giving the search tool, cherry could be a flavor, a fruit, or a type of wood, right? Or color red. Coffee table could be coffee, could be table, right? To put this all together, you need to be able to give the search engine a cohesive piece of information so that the search result doesn't show you a cherry drink or a coffee and a table, right? You want to have that very specific type of coffee table so you can drive conversion. And that is, in all reality, those things really drive conversion. If your first 5 listings are not what the customer is looking for, they will go to another page, right? And if you don't have the data that supports your site search engine to be effective, then you can try to optimize your site search engine as much as you want. You need to focus on the stuff, on the foundational pieces. But once you do figure this out, you can then start optimizing your site search. You can optimize all the other processes around it and then really drive conversion with the consumer. And so you're so right when you say garbage in, garbage out, but it is oftentimes multifaceted. It's not just simple, but it's really like a key to drive meaningful experiences for sure.
And another area where I don't think retailers, but particularly B2Bs, often think about the value of investment in product data, because I coach my clients and I teach my clients, or at least I try to change their mindset from, okay, product data is a cost center to our business, to where, no, this is an asset center. Yeah. This is an asset of your business. But what do we do with any asset? If we're a company that does drain laying and earth moving, we're going to maintain our caterpillars. We're going to invest money. We're going to invest thousands of dollars a month in maintenance and oil changes and hydraulic fluid changes and telemetry systems that automatically update us when we need to have something maintained. It's exactly the same. In digital data, everybody says data is the new oil. It's only the new oil. It's only an asset so long as it's maintained, it's mined, it's pulled out of the ground, it's turned into something useful like fuel. All these things have to be not only leveraged smartly, but maintained, enhanced, and extended smartly as part of a strategic motion within the business where data is actually recognized on the books as an asset. And so therefore, all of these investments are investment in an asset that helps to build a moat around our business and around our processes, that it becomes very difficult for new players to the market to come in and usurp us because of the long-standing commitment we've made to product data. The funny thing is, I work almost exclusively in the B2B space now, a little bit of D2C when they want to do B2B or vice versa, but almost exclusively in B2B now. And almost every major manufacturer, distributor out there, they point to a Grainger, they point to a McMaster car, they point to a Fastenal. When they talk about the greats in the industry and hold them up on a pedestal and say, these guys are the best in the game. Yeah. And they say, what tech do they use? What e-commerce platform do they use? What are they headless? What ERP do they use in the back end? How do they integrate with their suppliers and that sort of stuff? Vast majority of the differentiation that these major players have is that they have invested tens of millions of dollars into proprietary product data that they can't even get from their suppliers in many instances. So they make the investment in adding enrichment that nobody else has, and that becomes a strategic asset for them.
100% right. I couldn't say it any better. And I think this is where you see that, especially in the B2B space, that is very traditional and typically behind a couple of years from like the inventors like the forerunners on Amazon and D2C. But the point being is the same thing. Like you have a target audience that shops your site based on very specific needs. At Grainger, especially in the B2B space, this is not a common user shopping for the site. This is people that are either in maintenance for a office complex, or they shopping for building materials, right? Or there's a professional shopping for a very specific need. They want to find it at the right price, but they also still want to consume. Yes, this is the right product. They need to validate that they buy the right product. And so they still need a very specific user experience. And if you can drive all of those needs that these customers have incredibly well by having that data ready, they will convert and you will be a front runner in that industry. And I think that is something that will set themselves apart. But now think about if you can leverage AI on top of those to either drive a targeted experience around chat, product finding experience, right? That there's now another layer that is coming that we need to be prepared for, right? On the one side, right, search engine optimization is no longer the search. It's now also Chat GPT. Like people ask Chat GPT for questions.
It's GEO.
Exactly. And then how will generative AI or applied AI impact of how customers navigate on Grainger, for example, millions of SKUs in the catalog? How do you leverage AI to help your customers navigate through that? And so I think this is like yet another point, right, where these retailers or large distributors need to catch up on and start looking at, okay, we need to enable an even better product experience by leveraging AI, whatever that may be, right? This could be a target, like personal, you upload your
agent
bill of materials widget, and this will browse this all together. You need this for this, right? I'm building, this is my blueprints, right? And it tells you these are the materials, whatever that could be, right? But I think what digital does, it reduces the boundaries of people getting to the stuff what they want faster and more efficiently and easier and more effectively. And this is obviously a very loaded term, but all of this is powered by data. And again, if you don't have the data, you will not get there. And especially investing millions of dollars in that data into getting this right gets them future ready. But it is a big investment. And to your point, but that is their intellectual property that sets them apart, not the technology that sits behind it, not the nice fancy color in the top left corner, but really like the data that powers all of these processes.
And one other area where I don't see a lot of retailers even thinking about this enough yet, but certainly not B2Bs, is enterprise SEO platforms. So I'm talking like Verbolia, Similar AI, other platforms like this that do enterprise SEO automation.
Yeah.
And they are basically creating SEO optimized category pages at scale based on your rich product data, based on your structured product data, and matching that with search queries out in the world that we now can create a tailored PLP with only those products that match perfectly for those queries out in the world. And we can effectively do all the pre-filtering that they would normally have to do on a more generic category. And then they have to apply 5 or 6 facets before they find the 5 or 10 things that match perfectly their query.
Yeah.
These enterprise SEO automation platforms, they require extensive and highly accurate structured product data and taxonomy data to be able to do what they do. And without that, if you've only got unstructured data, so if you've only got a long description for every item in your catalog and you got 1 million SKUs, these enterprise platforms can't do what they do. They don't have the raw material there to be able to structure and create and propose these pages that are SEO rich that can meet search demand, because they don't know which products meet that demand. Right. And so they can't dynamically assign the right products to the right custom PLPs because they don't know which products match those queries, because they don't have the data to do that. And even something as smart as an Algolia or any other enterprise search, merchant personalization, a Nosto, whatever, all of these products, they index the catalog. They pull the catalog index either from the site or from your PIM system. And the reality is that they are hogtied by any limitations in your product data. They can't create something from nothing. That's the biggest challenge.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely right. And But I think you paint the vision as to what AI can do for us, right? Because it's a big challenge to do this manually, right? But
Yes.
to your point, if there's trends going on in the marketplace and you want to merchandise towards those trends, it sounds silly, but during COVID, everybody was looking for toilet paper, right? And then every retailer site you went on and you clicked add item to cart, it asks you, hey, do you want to add toilet paper to your cart? No, I do not. Right?
Yes.
And like those relatively stupid algorithms that tell you, hey, frequently purchased, everybody purchased toilet paper, so I should recommend this to everyone. But you want to actually look at the basket. You look at what are these people buying, and then get information out of this to what really makes sense that you can upsell, right? So that you can drive your cart value. And if you, to your point, if you don't have any product data that supports this, and if you just have a relatively simply set up search algorithm that just says, hey, this is our most sold items, therefore recommend, you will not optimize your cart volume. And this is really, you can use AI for it. Algolia, for example, does that really well. You can create these complex information there, but now take it one step further. If you want AI to be really effective, you need to give AI something to look at and to reference that, and then ultimately to work with. And I think that is something where not only based on season, right? There's different buying seasons through the year, right? There's back to school for office supplies. There's Valentine's Day for all of the confectionery customers. There's Christmas coming up. And if you're not participating in those trends, right? Everybody knows, I think we all typed in Christmas gifts for boys 8 to 10, right?
Yeah.
And you get garbage results, but that's what we're looking for. And I think this is where AI can interact with you. Okay, how old is your boy? What is your kid's interest? Is it a boy or is it a girl? What are they favoring? What sports do they play? If you had that engagement where you can answer a bunch of questions and the AI then looks at and finds really relevant products, I think everybody would convert and say, yes, this is a great service to me, because it is hard to find Christmas gifts. And again, I think this is where we can leverage AI, but AI can only represent your product. So if you're selling on Amazon, and if you don't have good context there, then that AI bot is not going to recommend your product. And I think there's going to be a much larger data need to support all the information that an AI will consume. But I'm definitely thinking this is where it's going to head here very soon.
Yeah, I've spoken many times on this podcast about where I think the UI UX is headed from an e-commerce perspective. I don't think we're too far away from having either an agent to agent experience or even a human to agent experience, whether it's a bring your own agent to the experience or whether it's an agent provided by the seller on an e-commerce website, for example, where instead of having to click around, whether using the search bar or the standard category structure, we're gonna have a concierge-like service. And I've used this example probably 50 times on the podcast before. But if I go into a jewelry store today, for example, the person behind the counter isn't going to just put 50 things on the counter, right? The first thing they do is they're going to ask me 20 questions. They're going to say, are you shopping for yourself or for someone else? Are you shopping for a special occasion? Are you shopping for an engagement? Or do you have a favorite stone? Does the person you're buying for have a favorite stone? Are you shopping for birthstone? Do you have a favorite metal? Do you have a budget range that you're looking for? They're going to ask you all these questions. Then they're going to go to their counter and they're going to pick 1, 2, maybe 3 items that they think fits that criteria, and then they're going to show that to you.
Right.
And I feel, but that's being prompted by them, not by you. And so the reality is, I think that AI is still very much question and answer, and even conversational AI. Look, I'm a ChatGPT Plus subscriber. I use lots of different AI tools every single day. I think it's not quite there yet in terms of conversational AI, but we're probably 6 to 18 months away from it being there to be as good as a physical sales agent in terms of them prompting you versus you prompting them in a question and answer sort of scenario. And then with large context windows, what we're going to get to is we're going to get to a place where when we return to the site, it's going to remember those previous conversations. It's going to remember those previous purchases. It's going to go say, oh, that pair of pants that you bought 2 months ago, how did those work out for you? Did you like them? Did they fit well for you? Did they work for that occasion that you used them for? Right. Are you shopping for accessories to go with those? Are you shopping for something totally different? Are you shopping for you or for someone else today? It's going to be much more like the physical buying experience with a really top-notch salesperson. But again, I go back to the fact that can only happen in the presence of amazing product data. And what it's going to unlock is a scenario where today, even Algolia or any enterprise search platform, as good as they are, the reality is if you start to get too many variables in that query string in the search bar, the relevance of the results drops the more variables you put in. With AI, it's exactly the opposite. The more specific you are, in the example you gave of I'm shopping for a 10-year-old boy, these are his favorite toys, these are his favorite cartoons that he watches, these are his favorite things, this is what he's going to be doing with this thing. Those would be like 50 variables in a query string in a search bar. But because AI can hold all those things in the same context window at the same time, now all of a sudden we're unlocking a much more human-like experience, aren't we?
Yeah. I think in the past on Amazon, there was always a difference between on Google, we would have inquiries around problems and challenges and more vague terms. And on Amazon, we would have more product specific searches. And I can see that there's going to be now a merge, right? Now we're looking for a product search for, in the simplest terms, I want to make a dinner for 12 people tonight. And I have people that are vegetarians and people that are allergic to this. Please make a recommendation and show me the ingredients that I can add to Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever, and have them shipped to my house, right? Like shopping companions. Or think about in the automotive side, I need to do a brake change for my car. Please let me know what items fit my vehicle. What do I need? What tools do I need in order to get this done? And I think that the AI can do this, but we're no longer having very specific product searches. I think we're going to see a lot of engagements with AI that are challenge-based, leading directly to a path to purchase. Be direct connection to a customized, tailored shopping experience based on whatever it might be. I think we're going to see this a lot where AI is going to come in. Amazon is just doing that with what is called Rufus AI a little bit, not really super well yet. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm scared the same way. Like AI is scary as can be. I don't know if you saw, but our CEO wrote a book this last morning, and it's like, it is good. It is a good science fiction book. And all he did was to give it a few prompts of, please do this. And it conceptualized it, and it put the chapters together, and it formed it out, and it created its own characters and the narrative. And it did this all by itself, and it is good. And then we dragged and dropped that into a Google Studio 4, turned this into a podcast. And all of a sudden, the AI was like analyzing. I was like, hey, two characters talking about this book. And it's just, we were sitting there within minutes, and it was mind boggling, and it was good, and it was scary good. And then it was fun, but we can now take those and we will have, like you said, human to agent interactions that are good, that are no longer clunky and wrong. And I want to talk to a real person. But think what that can do to customer support, right? You can probably talk to a knowledgeable customer support staff 24/7, no wait times. You actually have someone. And yes, we're talking about product data, but AI will impact us on so many levels and really can enhance our experience as consumers, as customers, wherever we are. And I'm excited for that, but it will also be very crazy because it's indistinguishable from are you talking to a real person or not? And that is, I don't like that one bit. I'm not going to lie. I'm okay with change, but oof, those things are moving fast.
Yeah, and look, to your point, that there's one specific area where I think you covered a lot of really good ground there, but there's one area where you tiptoed into it. But I think I'll give you an example. So this is a few years ago now when I still lived in New Zealand, and I was changing the brake pads on my Lexus IS350. And my particular year was a transition year from an old model to a facelift model. And the website that I used, the parts website of my local parts supply store, they had a part finder, and I put in the make, model, year of my car, and it recommended these brake pads. So I bought them. They didn't fit.
Yeah.
And so then I had to do some Googling. I did some research on Reddit, and they said, oh, in this transition, you need to look for this mark on the rotor. You need to look for this XYZ thing. And if you've got this, then that means you need these brake pads instead of these brake pads because you've got this unique set of calipers for this specific use case. Right. Where I think AI, because AI is trained, in most instances, these LLMs are trained on global data from across the entire internet, including Reddit, including YouTube, including everything else. So if I was speaking with an AI agent when I placed that order online, oh, hey, we think that these brake pads should fit your car based on make, model, year. However, other users from across the internet have reported that you need to look out for these XYZ things because these brake pads might not work if you've got this specific, unique version of this make, model, year of car, right? So it brings this global corpus of understanding and kind of the hive mind of humanity and the experiences of humanity. It brings those into the experience in addition to the raw data that the manufacturer of those brake pads would provide to the retailer of those brake pads. And he says, okay, the manufacturer says, okay, these makes and models of cars, these brake pads will fit. Well, maybe, but maybe not in certain scenarios. And it's that hive mind of humanity that enriches that raw product data with real experiences out in the wild. It's the fusion of those two things together. I'm not saying that manufacturer data is no longer going to be necessary, but it's going to have to be enriched by real world experiences. And that's why I think AI that brings in things like product reviews, that brings in things like ratings, that brings in all this information from across the commerce spectrum, that becomes something that a PIM MDM software was never designed to house that kind of data. But LLMs can and do, and that's where I think AI gives even PIM MDM software superpowers.
Yeah. So I think, especially in the automotive side, you mentioned something that seemingly sounds like a small task, right? Give me the right brake pads for my car. In the background, what that means, and you're probably familiar with the ACES and PI standards in the US.
Oh, yes.
The fitment information. But a single car can have upwards of hundreds of fitments, so rows. So every applicable fitment, like the 2019 F-150, this motor, this truck bed, four cap, whatever, this is one record, and then the next one. So all permutations are a single row of data. That means on the manufacturing side or retail side, it's millions of rows of data of fitment that need to be updated, maintained, and be accurate. But they drive what seems to be a very simple ask. Give me the right brake pads. And if this data is not right or not complete, or there's an anomaly in there because you had a transition year, right? So again, this is where PIM data meets fitment data meets AI to put this all together into here's a product recommendation. And it is a seemingly simple thing to do, but it is a mountain of a big challenge for manufacturers and retailers. And as a matter of fact, we're also in a transition time where customers still search in a certain way and not adopt AI. So example is on Amazon, right? Or anywhere where you chat. If you typically, you put your year, make, model in there, and then it filters your parts that are really relevant for you. But not every, and that's actually on Amazon, only 20% of all consumers actually put their car in what's called the Amazon garage. 80% search purely by the search bar. They type in, I have F-150 and I need brake pads.
Yes.
And so in order for that to work, you need to have, and this is not best practice, by the way, but you need to have that fitment information somehow referenced in the title, in the description, so that search query can actually find something.
Yes. Or trigger off a form of some variety, a simple form where you collect more data in a more structured way from the visitor or from the searcher and say, okay, now I actually need a little bit more information. Can you give me the VIN? Can you give me the plate? Can you give me the country, right-hand drive, left-hand drive? Can you give me a little bit more information? But I know I know the intent of what you're searching for, but I need now a little bit more context to be able to give you a relevant result.
Yes. And I think this is where auto parts retailers can really separate themselves on a better user experience than an Amazon could that sells all categories. And I think you mentioned the Grainger example earlier, but those are the opportunities for retailers now to really set themselves apart and really have a reason to be there. And it's, yes, you go into the store and there you have a service rep that knows these things, but those people are not they're going to become less and less. And now we need to train data and systems and models to step in its place and be able to guide a customer to the right product record. But again, I think there's a huge opportunity. The Advanced Autos, the AutoZones, the Rock Autos, you name all them one out there, to invest in these kind of experience. Because on the flip side, if you buy the wrong part, you'll return it and they have to pay for the return. And there's a big cost center. So not only is that investment just a sunk cost, it is an opportunity cost not to, because if you don't do it, you still have those returns. You still have those unhappy customers that then shop somewhere else. And so really the ROI analysis is not just how much more sales do I drive, but it is such a fundamental operational question now that I think can be solved with AI. But you need to have companies that are ready to do that step, willing to do that step, But I think it's a huge opportunity for retailers alike to set themselves apart by being really targeted and have a great user experience for those use cases.
I'll tell you another area where I think AI is going to become real relevant real soon, and I'd love to get your take on this. So going back to my brake pad example, now take my experience, and ultimately what I had to do is I had to take my brake pad off my car. I had to take my other car. I had to drive down to the auto parts shop. I had to say, okay, this is the make, model, year. Here's the brakes you said that I should have.
Yeah.
They clearly are not the same as this pad. Pull 2 or 3 sets of brake pads that you think will fit off your shelf, and we're going to open up the box. We're going to compare these, and we're going to make sure that they are a direct drop-in replacement for what I need. Now take that. So that was painful for me.
Yeah.
But now take a mechanic shop or take a fleet manager who's ordering thousands, hundreds or thousands of parts a day, a month, a year
Right.
for specific applications across their fleet, maintenance, workshop, etc. Now think of the time lost. Now think of the extra days that those vehicles have to remain in the shop while they get the replacement part sent out because the first part was wrong. Now, the cool thing is with multimodal AI, for example, I can do something as simple as take a photo of a Spanish language recipe or a list of ingredients or something off the back of an item. I can open up ChatGPT on my phone. I can upload that and I can say, can you translate that to English for me? Or can you identify this? When I was looking to buy a dirt bike here, there was a couple of dirt bikes I was looking at on Facebook Market, and they didn't have the year. They had the make and the model, but they didn't have the exact year. I thought I knew what the year was. I downloaded the image from Facebook Marketplace. I uploaded that to ChatGPT, and I said, do you know what year this is? Yeah. And it would say, based on the color scheme, based on these 5 things, we think it's probably this year or this range of years. We know it's a Honda. We know it's this, but we think it's this year because of all these things from across the internet. I think we're going to get to a place where I'm going to be able to take a snapshot of those brake pads. I'm going to be able to upload that to my local friendly neighborhood website, that my AutoZone, whatever it is, and say, you're saying that I need these pads. Can you validate and make sure, based on this image that I've uploaded of my brake pads, that it is actually the direct one-for-one replacement of these brake pads? Yeah. And then it can compare, as long as it's got the image data of the pads it's proposing, and it's got my image, and it can compare them. It can say, nah, actually, it's actually this alternate pad that you need. So I think we're going to get to a place where, as long as the underlying base data that AutoZone or whatever it is has available to them is as rich as detailed imagery, for example, I think this starts to create a much better experience that leads to much lower frustration by the customer and much lower return rates.
For sure. Yeah. So I think, if you really want to get, let's say, if we go back to the 1950s, 60s, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But back then, it was like you had a retailer and they put these products on the shelf, and you as a consumer, this is all you could purchase. You could go there and the selection was made for you, and you purchase these 3 bars of soap and whatever it is. And I think we're going now to a part where you can have a hyper-targeted user experience with the availability of all products worldwide at your fingertips, right? This is no longer that these large malls only show you their assortment. You can now literally, like you said, you can upload something and you have all of these products offerings and that are available on the world, ready be queried by your question, and you can purchase those. And I think that allows us now to focus on these user experience in automotive, on Facebook Marketplace for used products. Used car parts is another thing, right? Where you can purchase this. But think about all the others. Clothing. How is this going to look on me? And how you upload a picture of your silhouette, or the opportunities there endless. And I think it goes to a much more hyper personalization that is able. We can do that digitally that you couldn't do in a department store. But I think this is, again, I can't stress enough, there's data requirements for this. In order for you as a manufacturer to participate in those shopping experiences, you have to support these very important meta descriptions. But you can also use AI to help you enrich your data that you already have by those images. And I think it's an opportunity, but it's also an easy way to be left behind if you're not adopting, if you don't embrace AI as it is today. When we work with customers, we have some super early adopters that just jump head first and they figure out the rest later. Then we have some that say, okay, we want to stay within this realm of maybe a specific LLM or a specific tool. And then we have some that say, oh, There's way too much risk. We see a big corporate risk of all of our data leaking wherever we don't want it to leak, and we don't adopt. But quite frankly, I don't think there's the opportunity to move forward to just sit and wait. I think we all know the importance of AI there is. We need to figure out ways for each company. What is the right way to adopt AI and what capacity? I think we're going to have directors, VPs of AI at companies who are coming soon, people that are part of the digital team, but AI is going to become a much bigger part. And I think we see many more companies adopting it very quickly and figuring it out.
I think to your point, I think one of the underlying challenges goes back to what I said earlier, which is businesses not treating data as an asset with a real tangible value that they put on it, that they put on that asset, and that they assign a maintenance value to that asset every year that gets dedicated to maintaining, enhancing, and extending that data set. If you don't view it as an asset, you're never, ever going to budget appropriately for maintaining and extending that asset.
Right.
And therefore, if you don't really assign a business value to that, then it makes it really hard to justify ongoing expense and investment into that asset. And going back to just that brake pad example, in this particular case, almost every single brake pad product that was on this auto parts website used the same generic description for that brand and that version of brake pad, and they used the same standard generic image of the brake pad.
Yeah.
Now, AI is never going to work in that scenario to compare an image that I upload of my brake pad to matching it with a brake pad if they're using a generic image across the board for all their brake pads. Or if they're using a generic short description for a Lucas sintered semi-metallic brake pad, if they use that same short description for that same brake pad that applies to 1,000 different vehicles, that's never going to work. They need to actually get super specific apart from just a difference in SKU number, which is usually the only difference in that scenario. Is the only difference is the SKU. It's the image is the same, the description is the same. It's just the SKUs that's different, and the application table is different.
Yeah.
But we need to get a lot better at getting a lot more granular in the unique data that we have against each and every SKU and each and every variant of a product. Because the reality is, if I sell industrial pumps, for example, a series of pumps may look, and they may use the same image, but they may have a separate inlet diameter, a separate outlet diameter, a separate head handling capability, a separate amperage, all these different really technical specifications, differences between them that actually matter in the application I'm going to be using that pump for.
That's right.
Some are submergible, some are not submergible. There's all sorts of different really highly technical data that I need to know so that I can figure out whether that product is going to work in the application I'm speccing it into or not. Yeah. And if I'm using generic data at any point along that journey, that is not going to lead to a good outcome for the customer.
Yeah. I think we're all, this is a great way to point out the importance of data that is normally done by a human figuring those things out. And now what are the data requirements for that in the back end? We do have a pump manufacturer as one of our clients. We went through exactly that use case and the importance of that and what challenges it can lead to if you provide the wrong information and how customers shop based on that information. This sets a B2B buyer apart from a D2C customer, right? How do customers shop and how do buyers look? What is their motivation to purchase on these channels versus what is an emotional buyer looking for on an Amazon channel, for example. And therefore, those content and data needs are vastly different. And that goes along the entirety of automotive, of all these products. On the downside is when you have now access to all of the products out there, back to the example earlier, you have 3 products on the shelf that the decision was made by the merchandiser in the store. So you trust that store to provide good products to you. Now, on the flip side, you go on a site and there's hundreds of brake pads out there and you have never heard of them before, right? And you don't even know, yes, they fit your car, but do those ceramic brakes fit your rotor set you have on? Are they good? Is it a good brand? Is it a good product? People every consumer says, I'm okay with paying more if I know that I'm getting the good product. But I also have a budget, so I cannot just buy the best of the best. But those the concept of value and providing, yes, this will fit your rotors, and yes, this is a trusted brand, this is a good product, versus, obviously you don't want to say this is not a good product, but those are the questions when we make a buying decision. You may not have heard of those automotive brands, you may not have heard of those brake pads, you don't know, right? Typically, there's a service technician that provides a recommendation. But we also all had the use case where we went to our trusted shop and they recommended that we needed all of this replaced. And it was thousands of dollars. And we are questioning, do I really need that? And now just think if you have that unbiased AI that really helps you outline what you really need and then make a recommendation, say, hey, best practice is you would replace both sides. In many cases, we have seen customers being very successful with just doing this. This would be an alternative budget, but here's the risk to it. And you can now have that unbiased companion, I would say, to help you make the right buying decision. But again, this is something that we need, because if you now go on, and I don't want to call a name, but if you go on a site and look for products, you get dumped with a massive catalog, and you still have to make that decision yourself. And I think, again, this is where AI can really bridge that gap to help us make the right product selection based on our specific needs.
I think also brands are finally starting to realize, and especially retailers, but to a lesser extent B2Bs, are especially in distribution, wholesale distribution, they're starting to realize we have to move away from selling SKUs to selling solutions.
That's right.
And that oftentimes means kitting. That oftentimes means bundling. It oftentimes means grouped products. It oftentimes means, I was working a couple of years ago, I was working with a 4-wheel drive retailer, manufacturer, wholesaler, and wrecker. So they were selling brand new third-party products. They were selling some of their own branded designed products. They were wrecking 4-wheel drives and selling used components as well. And in many instances, when someone came to the website, they got really smart and they said, look, if someone wants to do a lift on their truck, whether it's a body lift or a suspension lift, or maybe they want to upgrade the suspension all the way around their vehicle, they don't want to have to shop for springs, shocks, struts, all these different components, and make sure that they all fit and that they all actually even work together effectively, and that that there's going to be clearances and all that sort of stuff. So what they started doing is they started putting together complete kits. Okay, cool. You want to lift your vehicle, you want to have this much additional ground clearance, this is the kit you need.
That's right.
If you want this much ground clearance, or if you're going to be doing Baja, or you're going to be doing these different if you're going to be you're just an occasional weekend warrior, then you don't need this super fancy $15,000 suspension kit. This $2,000 or $3,000 suspension kit will be absolutely fine. So based on what are you going to be using it for, what vehicle is it going on to, what is your budget range, what is your risk tolerance, all these things.
Right.
Cool. Now they're putting together packages and bundles where it takes the cognitive load off the customer's mind. They don't have to worry that they're buying the right thing for the right application, then think about, oh my God, maybe I have to return this if I order the wrong thing, and it's expensive, it's big, it's heavy, the shipping is a lot.
Right.
I'm going to have to cover the shipping to return it back. Oh my God, this is super stressful. And so I feel this is a point of differentiation for the brand too, because they have the knowledge in-house. They've actually got a workshop. They have specialists that have been in the 4-wheel drive space for 30 years. They know the best things to put together for a specific application. It is this knowledge, it is this subject matter expertise that actually adds the value to the transaction. It's not the fact that I have 100,000 SKUs available. It's which are the package of SKUs that actually matter to me.
That's right.
And without great data, and without even having the baseline of data of saying all these 5 items will actually work on this vehicle, this make, model, year, this version of the vehicle, you can never get to a place where you can even start thinking about bundling, kitting, grouping products together, and actually creating effectively a curation service as part of your SKU set, where you create these virtual SKUs that are your bundle. It's unique to you. So now nobody's going to be able to go and search online for that SKU, for that bundle, and compare you direct price to price between you and your competitor, because they're not selling it the way you're selling it.
Yeah. I think this is a huge part for opportunity for retailers, anyone to differentiate themselves and really in on their customer base and service them. But I think we need to be open to a lot of investment in that space. We need to be open to looking at taking a very hard look at the product data that we have today and how it's structured today and how we set this up. But I think it'll shape the jobs that we have today. They're not always going to be the same as they're going to be next year. But I think customers, or let's say customers meaning like any retailers or manufacturers, they will have to advance in order to think as to how they think about their product and how they think about their consumer buying and how they think about participating in this new wave. But yeah, I think there's opportunity, great opportunity. And we are deeply engaged with customers on both the generative AI, but the agentic AI, right? Like this exact process. And how do we reduce manual efforts to clean up data, to parse through data? So we leveraging AI to look at data, give us a feedback as to what is the recommendation, what should we do, what should we focus on, where's there duplications and things like this. Things that would take our consultants like a long time, we can now run massive amount of data through AI, come up with the feedback, make these changes, put this in place. So these huge projects and huge problems that used to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even want to start this mountain of work. We can do these in a much more faster fashion by leveraging AI, get us 80% there, then have a human mind actually do the consulting piece of it, put this in place, upload, and ready to go. So these seemingly large data projects are no longer like uncircumventable mountains. Those are like, yes, we can do it. Let's partner on those together. So to anyone out there, if you have data challenges, right, let's go work on this together. Let's work through this. But that is the foundation for everything to come. And if you haven't invested in data yet, you certainly should.
I couldn't agree with you more. What a fantastic conversation. An hour has absolutely flown by. Obviously, people can get a hold of you through LinkedIn. I'll drop your website link into the show notes. But other than that, if people want to reach out to you and have a conversation about all things AI, data, PIM, MDM, syndication, all these things we've been talking about today, what's the best way to get a hold of you and have that conversation?
Yeah, so you can always catch me on trade shows, Shop Talk. I'm all over the place. We're located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Obviously, reach out to me via email. We have webinars that we host from our company every Tuesday with the latest and greatest on AI. I invite you to participate. Those links for that are also on our website. But ultimately, there's tons of ways you can get in touch with us. Start with the website, and then we'll likely see you on some industry vertical specific trade shows. We'll be around. We're very active. I'm pretty sure we'll run into each other.
I love it. I love it. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. Mr. Carsten Krohn from Citation, what is your question for me today?
Oh, putting me on the spot.
Have to. Got to do it.
Tell me one part in your personal life where you now rely more on AI than you have. Let's say where you rely heavily on AI.
There's actually probably, I'm using first of all, I've redirected all my search queries. I've got the ChatGPT plugin into my browser. So now all my web queries go straight to ChatGPT. That's the first thing. And so I'm using ChatGPT probably 50 times a day, something like that. The other area where I'm using AI almost exclusively is in the content post-production distribution process. First edits of all my podcast episodes are done in Descript, which uses AI to identify filler words, word gaps, etc. Apply Studio Sound. That's all AI driven. Opus Clip uses AI to select the best clips from long form to make into short form. To add all of the embedded transcriptions, etc. That's all AI driven now. So I'm using AI, some form of AI tooling. I'm using it literally every day now. But one of the coolest areas is I'm learning new ways to use AI every day. That image, I was like, it was so funny because it was just less than 2 weeks ago where I was literally looking at this image of this motorcycle. I'm going, God, what year is this thing? And I thought, let's just try it. Let's just chuck that thing at ChatGPT and see if it knows.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it knows. So I am underestimating I've been working with AI since it hit the mainstream thinking for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And even I underestimate some of the things that simple AI tools can do nowadays.
Yeah.
It doesn't even cross my mind to ask AI something because I use this example. When Google first came out, right, and it first went mainstream, and I was hiring in the e-commerce space, there were people that would submit their CV, and it would say expert Googler, and that was actually a thing, like somebody that could get something meaningful out of Google. Now we have expert AI prompt engineers, and they're putting that on CVs.
That's right.
It is. Give it another year or two, and it's going to be just as ridiculous to put AI prompt engineer on your CV as it would be now to say expert Googler on your CV. I think it's going to become just as ridiculous because it is going to become so ubiquitous and so interwoven into our everyday life. It's all about the apps, right? It's just like when mobile phones first came out. Until the app stores came out to go along with those smartphones, they were dumb phones still. But once the apps came out, it's all about the apps, stupid, is the saying that famously came out at the time. It's all about the apps, stupid. And it's all about the apps that are going to be leveraging AI to do what they do in smarter, better, faster, more efficient ways. That is what I'm probably most excited about. But I'm using AI literally more and more every day. And it was a little bit painful when I first made the transition from Google search to ChatGPT search. It took me a few days to get used to the way to interact with ChatGPT to get the best out of it, but I'm learning fast. And I would say anybody that's in that conundrum and they're terrified of this AI thing, you got to start dipping your toes in the water every opportunity you get. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind, just like people got left behind with the mobile revolution. That's how I feel.
Yeah. Awesome. Man, it was a pleasure being here.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.